Good morning. Wanted to just, make sure I take the time starting out this morning just to continue to, show the gratitude and the appreciation I have towards so many different aspects of our organization. Starts with our owners. So fortunate to, have our owners be so supportive of what we do, the resources they provide, what we're able to provide for our players continues to be one of one in this league, and that leads into the players. Just so appreciative to, although I'm sure we'll get into it. This season was not in any way, shape, or form what we had planned or hoped for, but just the way they finished, the way they continue to fight, the way they stayed together and continued to, strive for success through adversity was impressive to watch, and so fortunate to be around the great group that I get to be around. That's same for our coaches. Total compliment to our coaching staff for, helping to persevere through what was a difficult season at times, and ultimately, finishing the way we did 5-0, down the stretch shows a lot about those guys, and most importantly, our players, our staff, throughout our building. We got some of the greatest people in the world supporting what we do, both on the first floor with the players, but also some of the folks that helped put together the Europe trip and help navigate some of the things that we had to navigate throughout the year, travel-wise, and just the people that do their jobs for us at an incredibly high level. So very thankful, obviously, to continue to attack this every day with those great folks, and something I'm looking forward to. Speaking of the season, clearly, especially getting a chance to watch a lot of the football this past weekend, as we thought it would, it definitely stung to not be a part of it. But what we've got to understand is we didn't do enough to get into the playoffs, and that's something that is not going to be acceptable for me or our team or our organization. Any year going into it the way that we always try to do, which is to give ourselves an opportunity to win a championship and bring our great fan base, best fans in the league, bring them and our ownership a championship. So improvement starts with me. I've already started that process of going through layer by layer, every aspect of doing my job, our coaching staff, and what we do schematically, how we prepare our team, how we build our off season, how we build our training camp, to try to make sure that we're the best possible team in 2026 that we can be. Very, very impactful week last week from a standpoint of, it's a lot of people do exit interviews, but it's a pretty extensive process for me getting, as much time as each individual player wants on our roster, practice squad, all those things. So that normally takes, 2 or 3 days or so, and that's always so impactful for me. And then I do the same thing with our coaching staff. So, it's important to do, and it's a valuable time for me to kind of have a great assessment and hear a lot of feedback, reflection, and ways that, we're all going to press on forward. Regarding our coaching staff, I don't really have any concrete updates or plans at this point, but I did want to make sure today I highlight the career of Mike Pettin. Coach Pett's going to be retiring this year. What a career he has had, and specifically for me, just his impact on my football journey, both my time when I was around him as a player, to him giving me the first opportunity to coach in this league, and then being a major part of a lot of our success over the 4 years we've had, from really being the first person in this building when I first arrived back in 2022. So want to take the moment to just make sure we celebrate him and the great career that it's been, and most importantly, just my relationship and impact he's had on me. So with that, I'll open it up to you guys.
How do you view the quarterback room as a whole, where it stands now relative to where you think it needs to be week one?
Yeah, I think, when I think about it, I think it's about, having the most talented and deep quarterback room you can. I think you've got to, I think we've played 8 guys, over the course of 4 years now at different times, different moments in the season and the schedule. comes, whether it's the exact team, and we learned that across our whole team with whether it was the offensive line or some of the other injuries we had to deal with. Like depth, matters across your team. And then ultimately, I think in the quarterback room, it's about having just the deepest talented room you possibly can each and every year. What that looks like at a pretty impactful position on your salary cap, when you're able to possibly plan for your depth chart looking in a way where you could be competitive no matter what. And I thought JJ, I was really encouraged by the type of football he started to play towards the second half of the season, and finishing the way he did. Really felt like he took we spent a lot of time talking about like what the layers of change really were, and I think we all just tried to have a mindset on completions and how we could generate them. We started to see a little bit of that show up. We saw some explosive show up. We saw the ability to kind of balance that with what I thought, at many points this year, our run game was, productive enough for us to move the football and stay in a lot of games, whether it was time of possession, ball control, those things. But we're still looking at a quarterback who's, started 10 games, 10 out of a possible 34 in 2 years. Not the ideal path for a young quarterback to develop on the field, but I thought he did. I thought he did some really good things. And J.J. McCarthy is a guy that wants to be great. I know he's going to work tirelessly to do that. I know his teammates have a lot of confidence in what he's going to go to work to improve on this offseason and come back and have a great offseason and be ready to hit the ground running in 2026. But, I think a deep and talented quarterback room will only enhance his ability to do that, and look forward to being a part of that process.
And then what did you learn personally about working with young QBs, with JJ and then also with Max?
Yeah, and I've worked with some other guys before, but I think the biggest thing is just trying to make sure you can maximize the off-season time all you want. You can maximize the different phases of the off-season program all you want. You can kind of craft a training camp, whether it's joint practices or different aspects of going against a really good defense every day and practice against our own group. But nothing can really compare to actual regular season game action and the things that I think the player learns throughout that process that are totally natural and normal, as far as the growth and development of a player. And then areas where, now that you have that experience, 10 games worth of that experience, how you can grow and develop from there. And, depending on the team and depending on maybe what either the internal or external expectations are of said team, some guys get different amount of understanding of that process than maybe on a team that won 14 games a year ago. And that's all part of it. But I think, like I said, I think whether it was JJ, Max, I think the best thing that I can say as far as what I've learned is to continue to just be the best possible support for them, hold them accountable to the things that you think are really important, try to craft game plans where you do everything in your power to make their job as easy as you possibly can, while knowing you're not going to be able to totally remove the difficulties of playing the quarterback position. And nor do I think if you want to help a player reach his potential, you want to totally be in a mode where you don't allow them to seek that growth. And we use that saying a lot around here of like we don't want comfort seekers. And I think the quarterback position, you're never going to be, even the best players in our league at the position, those guys might get comfortable doing the difficult over a long period of time or with their individual skill sets. But it's always a challenge. Every defense, every week is a challenge. There's great coaching in this league. And we got to match that as coaches, and that's where it starts with me. And I think I can do a better job, no question, moving forward, and we'll do so. But I also think that, allowing the natural growth and progression of a young quarterback or multiple young quarterbacks in the same season is hard enough. But now it's about what we do moving forward.
Kevin, with that challenge and balance you have of being the head coach, but also running the offense and teaching the quarterback, is there anything that you took from this year, or some of the challenges of getting all through those that makes you better for it, or that might be different in the future?
Yeah, I think when I first arrived here, in 2022. You know, I can remember some of the aspects of being the play caller and having to ultimately handle the responsibilities on game day as the head coach, whether it's challenges, you know, helping navigate the game, deciding, you know, different courses of action, aggressiveness we want to play with in different phases of our team. I do think that, you know, it's something that I'm always, you know, seeking to get better at, but also something that, you know, I feel pretty comfortable doing, and having a great staff with some great coordinators around me obviously helps. And then I think the empowerment of players and what we do in our preparation leading into these games, you know, and making sure that we have everybody moving in the right direction, individual players, you know, understanding exactly how they need to play to fit into their side of the ball, and then the three sides of the ball playing complementary to one another. I do think, although it wasn't close to our standard offensively, you know, that we've kind of established here over 3 years, and we know that. But I do think the nature of finding ways to win football games differently than maybe we have in the past was an area where I do think that I felt growth, not only myself but our team, our staff, our players, and navigating down the stretch with some of the adversity of being out of it, quote unquote, out of it. But really, the way this organization operates, we're always moving towards something, but it's not always going to be the comfort of something immediately right out in front of you. And that's why the sting of watching playoff games, it should hurt, it should bother us, and it does. I'm sure if you asked each and every one of our players, they would say the same thing, and us as a coaching staff and myself as the head coach, that is absolutely the case, and fuels the fire to make sure that we're doing everything in our power, both individually, like I said, starting with me, to make sure we maximize our football team moving forward.
Kevin, there's an arrest record in Florida for Jordan Addison. Curious if you have a reaction to what happened or what.
Kevin, I just learned about that very, very recently. So I don't want to speculate on that in any way, shape, or form. I do think we've got to, you know, get as many facts and find out exactly what happened. Speculating on at this point would be, you know, incredibly premature for me.
Do you feel like you can have the deepest and most talented quarterback room without potential competition at that position?
No, I think there has to be. I think that's what's going to make everybody better in that room. It's going to be what makes our entire offense, you know, thrive through that competition. And I think even if you ask Justin Jefferson, he's competing every single day. He's the best in the world at what he does, but he's still competing every single day to maximize what, you know, who he is as a player and ultimately achieve the greatness that he's destined to achieve. But that should be how our entire organization looks at their individual roles, you know, when we compete against each other and in the different aspects of the offseason. But no, I definitely want a competitive situation in that room, because I ultimately think that's what will make not only our, you know, the starter, but the next guy and the next guy. And we've learned we've got to get a lot of guys ready to play, and we've got to do it with a responsibility of being the best version of our offense, and the quarterback has a huge role in helping us do that.
Outside of the room, do you see bringing in a quarterback to compete in camp with the reps? Because, I mean, in camp this past year,
Yeah.
pretty much JJ and then Sam. Do you
Yep.
want an actual competition between two quarterbacks on the field in training camp this time around?
Yeah, I absolutely want a competitive situation. What that looks like with the reps, I think it's all predicated on, obviously JJ is going to be a major emphasis for our staff and our team and me personally, you know, and we'll figure out what that looks like as we navigate, you know, the early part of this offseason when it comes to managing the roster, and I know Kwesi and his staff will do a great job of that. But I think ultimately we've got to decide how to not only continue JJ's progression, allow him to continue to ascend as a young player, 22 years old with 10 starts. But at the same time, like I said, I think the competition in that room will only enhance our entire team.
To go back to, do you now, in speaking about your growth personally, Kevin, do you regret all the work that you tried to do in season with McCarthy? Because it felt like once you sort of dropped the mechanical talk and all of that, he started to thrive more. Is there a regret on your part of trying to probably hone a lot of things in the season?
Well, I think I think talking at this podium, necessarily might not coincide with exactly how we're coaching the player minute to minute, but I do think just the overall noise of the fundamentals and techniques and the things that we believe, are important, and I think JJ believes are important, just talking to him and extensively last week once we wrapped up. And he knows, the things he's going to work on. He knows the things that he needs to be a little bit more consistent at, like a lot of young players do, assessing once they've had the ability to play a little bit. And but yeah, I think part of it is evaluating for sure. When you look back on the timelines of, we were talking about a lot of those things after, won a game on, against what has turned out to be a pretty darn good football team, especially playing at home in that opening game, and then for a lot of different circumstances, whether it was, in his personal life or, with the welcome in Rome to the world, which was a phenomenal thing for him and Katia as a family. But then in that same game, coming off of not practicing all week, he has the high ankle, which, although we tried to work through the rehab process as much as we could to be working on some of those things, it did feel like some time lost on some of those things we were trying to let the concrete dry on. And there was, not very many sequential games that took place after that before, maybe we stopped talking about it so much at the podium and just, tried to, still coach and still do the things that we think are important. I thought Josh did a phenomenal job navigating that in the quarterback room and just trying to provide as much clarity on how we best go about this completion mindset, which is a critical factor to how our offense moves the ball. But yeah, looking back on, I think that's part of the layers that, the personal reflection of how you go about, improving our team, in the short term for sure. But over the long period of time, I do think we need to, I do think we need to still continue to coach the position how we feel very strongly about and have had a pretty good track record with quarterbacks that make those things a major part of their game.
Kevin, with the playoffs penalty in the last two games, the quarterback play from high-end quarterbacks, Herbert and Rodgers, their offenses really struggled. And it seemed like in the last couple, you guys shut down Goff, and you watched the 49ers against Seattle, and nobody played that well. Is there anything changing with defenses that it's more difficult to play that position right now? Because you see some of these, high-end experienced guys really struggle some.
Yeah, I think, whether it's the defenses that can, get consistent pressure on the quarterback, whether it's through sending more than just 4 or, some of the best defense in the league can get home with those pressures, sending 4 and making the coverage real difficult to kind of assess, especially pre-snap. There's a lot of defenses in this league where, you can play the entire snap and not necessarily be able to tell exactly what the coverage was or what the final locations of players were. And I think that, goes into a bigger conversation of defenses are understanding a lot of our mentalities depending on the system that you have and a lot of the influences on me of, my coaching journey that led us to building the system we have here. It's predicated on attacking parts of the defense, even, no matter what defense they're playing, what are the roles and responsibilities of defensive players within that said defense is my job, whether I'm a linebacker and I've got a part of the run fit, but I also have an area of coverage I'm responsible for. Whether I'm a safety, the same question kind of can get called into play. A corner, if I'm a flat defender in a 2-deep coverage, how do we make that player have to do their job through the bind of having multiple things to defend and trying to 2-on-1 and attack certain players within coverages. I think you're seeing defenses do things to try to make that difficult, but at the same time, everything is predicated on affecting the quarterback. And the amount of times I went in there to talk to the team on a Wednesday and talk about the number one goal defensively is to either get the quarterback off the spot or if we were playing a more mobile quarterback, how do we contain this player, make them uncomfortable, but not let them fall into, some wildly impressive off-schedule plays, which we've seen, whether it was Caleb Williams, that game and what they were able to do was predicated a lot on the individual effort of Caleb outside the pocket, whether it was 4th down, whether it was some of the plays that gave them an opportunity to have a chance at the end. And we know that about him. We know that about a lot of players in this league that have the ability to impact the down, both in the sequence of, how you draw it up, but then it's when that second play starts that the mindset has to be laser focused for each individual week. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just it has become such a individualized week of our team versus their team and the matchups within that. And as you're navigating some things, and every team, there's teams in the playoffs that have navigated injuries, really, really well and done a phenomenal job coaching, players stepping up into roles, the next man up mentality, and the teams that do those things, really well and stay true to who they want to be from a system standpoint, tend to be the ones still playing. And then there's the teams that have been able to stay healthy and find rhythm and success throughout the year and kind of stack that. But it's still, as we're seeing, comes down to playoff football comes down to that individual game and the draw and who you play and the matchups within that, whether it's an individual one-on-one matchup along the front, whether it's a matchup on the perimeter with a receiver and a DB or whatever it is, and the strengths of teams are now known, and the ability of your team to take away some of those strengths and make people play with different pitches is ultimately the best way to describe playoff football, and who does that the best. The turnover battle's huge, the penalties, time of possession, the kicking game phase is massive, in each and every one of these games. But it all matters when you start talking about the best teams competing for a championship.
Last couple. You don't have any concrete updates on coaching at this point, but how would you characterize negotiations with Brian Flores and where things stand about bringing him back here?
Yeah, we've been really aggressive, and Flo knows exactly how we feel about him. But at the same time, want to be really supportive. I'm really excited for him. I think he's going to for sure talk to one team about their head coach position. Would not be surprised at all if it ends up being multiple. I think he's more than deserving. Everything he's brought to our organization over these last 3 years, it's been an awesome process to go back to when I first sat down with him and really talked about this vision and his impact and what it's inevitably ended up being. It's been a really positive thing for me. Our relationship is super strong. We're talking, almost every day, and just making sure he knows the intent of where we're at to have him as our defensive coordinator. And he's kept no secrets about his desire to stay here doing that role as well. But I think it's important that he totally commits to going through this process, especially the head coaching process, and put his best foot forward, which I know he will. He's been through it before, and I'm not surprised people are wanting to talk to him about that role, and excited for him to do so, all while knowing our number one priority, really before the season even ended, but our number one priority has been, to get that thing done with him.
How do you take it that it hasn't happened yet? It's been 10 days or so since the end of the season, and he could sign that and still go interview for head coaching jobs.
Yeah, I don't particularly take it any kind of way. I mean, whether it was trying to get something done in training camp, trying to get out in front of kind of this period before people would be able to talk to him about a similar role with their teams. You don't see a lot of players signing free agency before free agency starts sometimes, because they want to know what their market is and they want to be able to totally clarify that. We're very much being aggressive to try to get something done with him, but at the same time want to be respectful and make sure he can go through whatever process, whether it is for a total, clarity and commitment to the head coaching process. But I don't have, based upon my conversations, and I think I shared this the last time we were able to speak, was I have a lot of confidence we're going to be able to get something done with him as our defensive coordinator.
Last one.
Kevin, with JJ's offseason, do you think he needs anything big mechanically to get to an accuracy spot that you guys want him to be at, or do you think it's just the footwork focus that you've talked about now for multiple years?
I think so much of it goes back to playing with a repeatable at the top of any drop, whether it's quick game, 5-step, 7-step, play action. Anytime he's coming to balance at the top of a drop, that base balance body position to be repeatable, to be able to allow him to activate the throw required, in regards to the NFL passing game of spacing and timing, and in regards to our passing game, we talk a lot about voids and vacancies, and attacking those by putting individual players, regardless of coverage, in a bind to have to defend multiple things, and then obviously building progression so guys can eliminate quickly and get the ball out of their hands in a timely manner. And that's where the mastery of it comes from, a standpoint of tying in, okay, here's the scheme, here's what we're trying to get done. Here, maybe I do have an alert versus this coverage on this play. Maybe I do all the scheme stuff, continuing to become second nature, and not just on the practice field. The 10 games of inventory we do have, there was some real improvement of decisive decisions in the rhythm of an NFL snap, which, as we talked about with the pass rush earlier, needs to be something that you're able to process and do quickly, and he showed some real moments of that. In regards to, some of the fundamentals and techniques, it's about being able to repeat, the different types of fundamentals and techniques, and be consistent with those things, so that you're not having to self-correct, as the ball leaves your hand. And you're not having to ultimately, try to take a lot of variables that are existing maybe that you can control, and eliminate some of those by the consistency of how you do your job. And that's fundamentals and technique, and footwork and things like that are all just a way of getting to that proper base and body position at the top of a drop, and then how you navigate the pocket, how you keep your eyes up through a progression, and ultimately find a completion to generate a positive play, because we all know that they have a negative effect on the defense, whether it's a 5-yard completion or a 60-yard touchdown. They all have an effect, and it's hard to do those jobs consistently if the foundation of playing the position at this level is not there. And I think he grew tremendously throughout the season in kind of learning that feel and why it's important. And now he gets a full off season to stack a lot of days, and knowing what it felt like for those 10 games and hit the ground running doing so.